Hello, welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton,
I'm Bob Scarborough.
and our guest
I'm
is.
John Gaber.
All right, we are this week's edition of the FAIRtax Guys. Wait a minute, there it is. Where's your banner, Scarborough?
Oh, I didn't know on the three shot we were using.
All right, well, we'll give you a pass on that this week, but
I don't have a banner, but I got a book.
Oh yeah, we'll talk about. There it is. We'll talk about that here in just a second. But actually, we're going to call an audible. Last week we started our "You Might Be a FAIRtax Fan" list. Got about halfway through it and said we were going to continue it this week, but something intervened, and that is called the release date for John Gaber's book, The Tax Deception. So I figured while that story is hot, we'll get the man himself on. And so, John, let me extend a formal welcome and thank you for joining us on the program today, all the way from Panama. You used to live in Texas. You now live in Panama.
Yeah, I still maintain a residence there, but we bought a vacation home here right after the virus stuff ended. And, a year and a half later, I guess, we moved down here.
All right. Well, I see you're looking at the Pacific Ocean, and I've got an Alaskan glacier behind me. So we're about as geographically as far apart as we can get. But I wanted to talk to you about this. This is not your first book on taxes. I say, what inspired you to write a second book on taxes here?
Well, my first book was The Rich Don't Pay Tax, or Do They? And the last third of the book was going into the problems that we have with the rich paying tax, how much tax they're paying, and we keep trying to punish them, and they're moving offshore. And about 4 times faster than the people at lower income levels. It's still not a lot, but when you consider that they pay like 40%, the top 1% pay 40% of all personal income tax collected by the IRS. And I had used a goals-based analysis in here. So I've got one here. There's goal number 11, defining the problem of what constitutes success. Oh, what's this one? Oh, okay. Reward, savings, and investment. Here, there we are. So reduce compliance costs. A lot of the stuff that is in this book, people read that book and said, gee, why don't you expand on that? Because I just devoted a little bit of space to each one of the goals. And of course, you can see too that it's a lot thinner. So I expanded upon the last third of that book, and that became this book.
So, and we are recording this on Friday, March 15th, which just happens to be the official release date. So your new tax deception book has been out officially for not quite 12 hours as we're recording this. How do the numbers look?
Let me show you here this background. I've got the Amazon hot new releases there. There's 1, 2, and where is it?
I'm at the wrong spot. Other
3
side, there it is.
For hot new releases, and in that case, it's number 1 in 3 categories. And then in this one right here, that's bestsellers, and it's number 4 in the category of development and growth economics. So the numbers are looking real good right now. Also, I did a search just a little while ago for simple term, just tax reform. All I did, put in tax reform. The first page here, there's tax reform, first page, and down here, number 2 is the tax deception. So it's doing real well. It's going to be found. A lot of people will be able to learn about the fair tax that don't know anything about it. So I'm very pleased with it.
You had former Congressman John Linder write the foreword for you. How significant is that to the publication, to the book?
Well, I think it's very significant. In fact, if you look at the cover of the book, not only is his name on there, but you'll see Mike Huckabee's name is on there. He said, the tax deception, John Gaber's brilliant book, The Tax Deception, should be read by Democrats and Republicans alike. Between those two, I think that has made a lot of difference. People just they see the names and they say, well, if they like it, I must, I better read it. So.
All right. Well, I'm somewhat intrigued by the title, The Tax Deception. What is the tax deception? How are the Congress critters deceiving us?
Okay, at the end of each of my goals here, I have a section on the tax deception. So here's one. Let me find a better one here. People say, oh, the tax deception. People say a flat tax could eliminate the income tax. Well, it can't.
No, the flat tax is an income tax.
Well, I say the income tax, the IRS. The flat tax can eliminate the IRS, but it can't do more than about 11 or 12% because the reason for the IRS is the tax gap. And so they're trying to say, oh, well, we'll eliminate the IRS and send your tax return in on a postcard.
To whom?
Where are you going to send a postcard?
To the IRS. Wow.
Oh, they say, oh, but it's going to be so much simpler and people are going to, pay everything they owe and we won't have to do that. Well, you get to the point where you're saying, oh, well, people they're not going to do that because they're going to pay everything they owe. Well, what happens if you start paying everything you owe and you've been made, let's say you're a cabinet maker, you're a carpenter, but you run a cabinet making business out of your garage and you make $50,000 a year as a carpenter, but you make it an extra $20,000 a year as a cabinet maker. And all of a sudden you start reporting that. What's going to happen? The IRS is going to audit you for the last 7 years, not the year you reported, but the 7 years that you weren't reporting. So they're not going to report it. And almost 90% of the tax gap, 87, 88%, it varies from year to year. Almost 90% of the tax gap is underreporting and non-filing. That doesn't go away under a flat tax. That's just one of the deceptions. People say, well, you can't eliminate the income tax with the fair tax. Again, there's another deception. And I've got a little chart. Y'all have seen it, I'm sure, that I've posted it several places where showing the flow from the cash register to the states, to the federal government, and then how that comes back the other direction. And I've got, nice little charts in here too, but there you go. That's the chart. You've probably seen me post that one.
As a matter of fact, I have.
The IRS is eliminated because the money flows from the taxpayer to the cash register, to the states, to the federal government.
Yes.
When you look at the audit path, then the federal government can only, federal government can only audit the states. The states audit the businesses, the retailers, and nobody audits the individuals. So again, but that's a tax deception. They're saying, oh, you can't get rid of the IRS. Well, you only need about 100 people to audit 50 states instead of thousands and thousands of armed IRS agents auditing individuals. So a lot of little deceptions there. Some of the goals, I have like 3 or 4 deceptions, I think, that I list, at least 3.
All right.
So
go ahead, Bob.
That may not know who you are, John, give us a little bit of a background in you. Who is John Gaver? How do you know all this?
Well, when I got started in all of this, I lived in London. We lived in London for about a year, and we've traveled all over the world. We had an import-export business for a while, and I've met a lot of expats and a lot of wealthy expats. We lived in a building in London that was built for North American, specifically U.S. expats. And in meeting all of these people, I became aware of the fact that so many people, wealthy U.S. citizens, were not just leaving and moving to another country like I am, they're renouncing their citizenship they're giving up their U.S. citizenship because they feel like they're being attacked. And I got to looking at this and examining it. Well, that was back when I published the first version of The Rich Don't Pay Tax, or Do They, in 2012. I updated it in 2017. But since 2012, I have been voraciously reading everything I can on economics. I've probably read over 1,000 white papers, maybe 2,000. I don't know, but at least over 1,000. I've read every kind of book on economics you can imagine. In the past, before I even started this, I read Wealth of Nations, of course, Adam Smith, and I've read Mein Kampf. I like to read about opposing ideas and so I can understand what each side is doing. And anyway, I got to learning more about it, and I said, well, I've got to do this. Other people asked me to go after that last section of the first book. And I said, okay, well, I'll do it. And I've read some more and put all the pieces together. And because I learned it on my own, I didn't have some economics professor looking over my shoulder saying, oh, no, you can't use that word. People will understand that. We've got to use an economics word that nobody understands so we can justify our big salaries. Yeah. Well, as you can see, right, where is it? No, right there. Certified jargon free.
All right.
I learned without having that economics professor say, oh, don't use those plain words. You got to use the complex words. So everything in here is made for ordinary people who don't have an economics degree.
Well, Steve Hayes wrote a chairman's report, the most recent one that just came out about that book. And he said that you are comparing like 3 or 4 different tax reform plans to the current income tax and to each other. Exactly what plans are you talking about in this book? Well, I know the fair tax is one of them.
I start with the income tax that we have now, and I identify 22 specific problems with the income tax, and those are turned into 22 goals for tax reform. And then I apply those goals one at a time to each of 3 plans: the fair tax, that's HR 25, the flat tax, which is HR 1040. And then, since I knew going in that HR 1040 had a lot of flaws, it could never pass, but I wanted to give a flat tax the best opportunity possible. So I created a third flat tax, and this was a moving target. So in one goal, I might say I need withholding, and in another goal, I say I don't need it. So it changed so that the flat tax could score the best that it could score for every goal. The best thing that the ideal flat tax could do was just barely over 50%. The fair tax hit every one.
Okay, specifically, what are some of the goals? I said you got 22 of them. We don't have time to go through all 22 of them, but what are some of the major goals that you say that tax reform should accomplish?
Okay, real quick: simplicity, transparency, unintrusive, fair to all, untaxed poverty, border adjustable, increased compliance, tax crypto earnings, reduce compliance costs, reward savings and investment, tax the illegal economy, which is different than taxing the underground economy. Underground economy is that carpenter that works out of his garage, the cabinet maker. Illegal economy is the drug dealers and car thieves and burglars and such. So that's a very special group we have to address there. Repatriate offshore lost jobs, repatriate lost dollars that have been offshored, encourage foreign investment that is different. That's saying get people from other countries to invest in the U.S. Residency-based, deter favoritism. Where are we here? Revenue neutral, stable revenue generation, which an income tax is just the opposite of that. It has a chance of becoming law, discourage raising rates, end tax behavior end tax as a behavior modification tool, and end the weaponization of the income tax. Those are your 22 goals.
While we have a second, let me give everybody the website that you can go to right now and order this book, taxdeception.com. There's a button on there that is a little green button. It says available March 15th is the date we're recording the program. You click there, it takes you over to the page. You can get Kindle downloaded immediately. You can also get a paperback version, which you've seen John hold up there. And whatever amount you decide to pay, the information in it is priceless and worth the purchase.
Now, if you're interested too, you can just click. If you could blow your screen up, you can click on this. It should be readable even as a small image because it's got a lot of error correction in it.
It is. I just snapped it on my phone a second ago, and that QR code that John is showing you now will take you to the purchase page at Amazon, and you can get it in the next few days. You know, the
sooner the better, because the higher it ranks in the first day or two, the more people are going to be drawn to it, and more people who don't know anything about the fair tax will be tempted to pick it up, and we'll get more people learning about it. And even if you're a fair tax supporter, there's things in here that I didn't know when I started writing this book. It is amazing how great the fair tax really is. The people that put it together were geniuses. They really were. It hits everything you can imagine.
And I take it the income tax pretty much strikes out on everything you can imagine.
Well, yeah, that was the whole point, is that the 22 goals here are things that are problems with the income tax, and the flat tax only hit about half of them. Since there was 22 goals, there's 220 possible points, because there's 10 points per goal. And the best that the ideal flat tax did was 115.
Okay, that ideal flat tax, that's what you concocted. That's not 1040, correct?
Right. 1040 got 71 points. So that's there's a lot of problems with it. And the people, one of the deceptions is, it's going to be fair to everybody. Well, actually, the number of taxpayers isn't going to change, and the standard deduction is going to keep those that are not paying tax from still not paying tax, at least there. They pay tax at the cash register, but they don't pay tax there. But at a 19% rate that drops to 17%, that means those people that are paying 25.99%, the top 1% of taxpayers, will go from paying right at 26% to paying 17%. So if those people are paying less and the people at the bottom are not paying any more, who gets to pay the rest? People in the middle.
Us in the middle, yeah. That's the thing you always hear. Oh, that's a plot to give the rich a tax break. And so the fair tax definitely is not that, but the flat tax 1040 is, and nobody even seems to mention HR 1040. I barely hear anything about that. But
you look at Ted Cruz and Rand Paul both ran on a flat tax when they were running for president. Both of them ran on Hall Rabushka, basically. They were the two guys back in 95, I think, that wrote a piece in the Wall Street Journal, and they had a peer-reviewed publication about it and everything. And that's the flat tax that most people base their flat taxes on, including HR 1040, including Rand Paul, including Ted Cruz. They all are variations on the theme, except that Hall Rabushka said it needed to be 19%. And the politician said, I don't think I can sell that to my people. We're going to drop it down to 17%. So that's a problem. It may not be revenue neutral.
And that's the thing that you hear. That's what you hear a lot of people say. Oh, we got to make sure that we don't, upset the apple cart in Washington. And of course, the requirement of any kind of adjustment or modification to the revenue coming into the federal government has to have has to have it has to balance. It has to come out. But you hear the smokescreen answers. A lot of times, folks are just putting information out there to confuse or delay the understanding of what the fair tax is all about. And a lot of folks aren't going to necessarily take the time to consider, but the opportunity to pick up the book, the Tax Deception, is another tool in the arsenal of information that we can let people know about when we debate the benefits of the fair tax against everything else.
Yes,
Absolutely.
I think part of the idea here is to make this book work for both fair tax proponents and for people that are not quite there yet. In fact, a lot of people who are opponents of the fair tax may look at all this stuff, and when they get through totaling it up, I invite people to make your own score. Keep up with your own scores. I don't care what you do. When you finish scoring, the fair tax is going to be well above any flat tax that you can come up with. It's just,
have you had
no
any
way a flat tax can. Go ahead.
I said, have you had any economists, professional economists, or other folks like that review what you've done and see if they agree with your scoring?
I've tried, but most of the professional economists tend to be people that are on the payroll of various politicians or.
Oh, okay. Well, send a
super
copy to
PACs or
Professor.
something like this.
Send a copy to Professor Kendall. I imagine he'll like it.
I plan to do that, and to Dr. Moore.
Oh, yes, Stephen Moore.
Stephen Moore, yes.
All right. Once again,
But
though,
this is a high level. This is a high level view. This is not microeconomics. This is a high level view for the average person to be able to look at it and say, this makes sense. And it's to help a lot of the people, ask me questions. Well, what about this condition? How will it treat seniors? Why will, well, I'm a senior.
yeah.
I want it, and I know why, but you have to, we don't have time to go into all these things, obviously, but in the book, we go into a lot of these things, that the questions that are asked me all the time. One of the things that drove this too is that after writing the first book, I was on a lot of radio programs, broadcast radio programs, internet programs. I did a lot of public speaking. I even spoke to a Pachyderm Club. They were the ones that gave me the toughest questions. And fortunately, I was able to answer every one of them. And that's part of why I wrote the book, is because I knew that I could answer those questions. And a lot of times you hear people or see them on Facebook or Twitter or somewhere trying to answer the question, and they're stumbling. And this, by breaking things down into a point by point, little tiny pieces, and examining that piece, you break it apart, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, now I understand. As you do this, that's, by the way, what got me into the fair tax, was doing a goals-based analysis back in 99, I guess, right after it came out. I had been a fan of Hall-Rabushka because it was the best that I had come up with. I had done a goals-based analysis on it. I think I had 11 goals back then, maybe 12. Whatever it was very few. But Hall-Rabushka did quite well. And when the fair tax came out, I thought, where do these people get off calling it the fair tax, right? I'm going to waste it. I started doing a goals-based analysis on it. And I'm sitting there saying, well, wait a minute. Let me do some more research here. 3 days, I thought I was going to do this in a couple of hours. 3 days later, I'm still in the first goal. And by the time I finished a year later, I was a solid fan of the fair tax.
Well, that's about you initially set out to disprove the fair tax as a viable and a good way to do it. And the more you got into it, the more you realize that, hey, you can't knock this one down. This is a good one.
Yeah, a goals-based analysis is used by everybody. You may not realize it. When you go to buy a car, you go out to buy a car, you say, well, do I want a 4-cylinder, a 6-cylinder, an 8-cylinder? Do I want an electric vehicle? Do I want a sedan, compact? Do I want a hatchback? Do I want a truck?
How
what
are you
color
going
do I
to
want?
how you're going to use it determines which one is the best one for you.
Right, but you set goals when you go out. You know,
Mm-hmm.
well, I want blue or gray. Someone else says, well, I want red or black, and somebody else wants a different color. Well, so you know what you want. You've set those goals, and the car that meets those goals, because that dealer is not going to have the exact car you want. Chances are. So you go out
Mm-hmm.
with a set of goals, and you find the one that meets those goals the best. And usually one rises clearly to the top, and that works in tax analysis as well.
All
Anytime
right.
you're comparing two or more options, a goals-based analysis will break it down.
All right. We got about 2.5 minutes left. Scarborough, you get one more swing at him.
I just bought the book. It should be here Monday or Tuesday. I'll be reading it, and hopefully along with you out there, folks that are involved in the understanding of what we're all about with HR 25. Final words, John. How exciting is it for you to have this thing written and out there and something that people can hold in their hands and read?
It's quite exciting. I got started, like I said, when I was writing the second version of The Rich Don't Pay Tax. And if you look in the back page of that, well, maybe not here. I thought it was. There is a thing that, I guess not. There was supposed to be a thing in there about, maybe it was only on the ebook, saying, watch for the next release or the next book, The Tax Deception. And that was in 2017. And I've been working on this book since then. So it's quite a relief.
Right. Well,
and to see it doing this well.
I hope it continues to do well. I hope people pick it up and read it. You can get it at Amazon, Barnes and Noble from your website there. But I'm afraid that's going to be all the time we've got for this edition of FAIRtax Power Radio. John, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Wish you much success with it, and we will have you back sometime and see how we're actually coming along with this thing.
Okay, great. It should be up on the Apple bookstore as well. We're having technical issues with Apple right now, but it should be up there for iOS books as well.
All right. Well, good. Thanks again for joining us. And that is going to wrap up this edition of FAIRtax Power Radio. Everyone, thank you so much for watching, sharing the videos. We do invite you to be with us every week here on FAIRtax Power Radio. But until we meet again, I'm Bob Paxton.
I'm Bob Scarborough.
I'm John Gaber.
Reminding you that the fair tax is the only truly fair tax. And once you understand it together, guys,
you'll demand
it.
So what would you do for her?
We've got several programs that will help her. We just need to find out how much she makes. But the good news is, the less she does, the more we can help.
Yeah.
If I may, with the fair tax, we wouldn't even tax her income. So the more she makes, the more she has.
But still, a consumption tax could eat up a lot of her income.
Which is why at the beginning of every month, we're actually going to give back all that she pays in taxes on basic necessities.
You're going to give her back her taxes?
Every month. On everything taxed on basic necessities. But we're also going to give it back to you and to every American citizen.